What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another video. So as you probably know, having good mechanics in Fortnite is absolutely critical if you're trying to reach a high level. Being able to build and edit fast, go for piece control plays, and do all this stuff is going to be absolutely critical if you want to become a good player. And that's why in today's video, I'll be covering exactly how you can improve your mechanics dramatically in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3. I'll be covering all of my favorite practice methods and general tips you guys can use to get insane mechanics super fast, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you need to do to become an insane mechanical player. Before we get into it though, if you find this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more Fortnite tips and tricks content just like this in the future, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. And lastly guys, if you want to show some extra support, it's always appreciated if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It takes like 5 seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who uses it. But with that said guys, I'm not going to hold you any longer. Let's get right into today's video. So the first method I want to talk about when it comes to improving your mechanics is going to be drill maps. One of the fundamental ways to get good mechanics in Fortnite is to grind out what I call drill maps. This term refers to basically any map that involves you doing certain things over and over again. This can be maps that have you do a bunch of piece control drills. These can be edit courses and edit maps. They can be tunneling maps, etc. Basically what these maps do is they help you to build up your mechanical fundamentals directly, and they should carry over into regular fights a good amount. When you think of pretty much most of the Raider maps and most of your like editing dictionary maps and things like that, that's typically what I mean by drill maps. My recommended strategy for drill maps is to pick one that targets your weaknesses, whether those weaknesses are editing slowly, struggling with piece control, not knowing retakes, etc. You can pick an exact map to actually target that. Since there's a lot to cover in this video, I don't want to go in depth on a bunch of maps, but I did definitely want to talk about drill maps just because they're so important. We will actually be covering more maps throughout the video as well, so I don't want to go over too many right now. But on screen are going to be some of my favorite drill map codes. The top one is going to be a piece control map, which is Raiders Piece Control Map V3. That one has like 25 different piece control scenarios, and it'll help you an absolute ton. The middle one is the general mechanics map by Raider, which is Raiders Mechanics Training Map V3, I believe. That one also has a ton of practice methods. And the bottom one is just a regular free build map where you can run around and practice any techniques you already know. So overall, these 3 maps should definitely help you guys and get you a good start. And of course, as you move forward, especially if you watch a lot of my videos, I'll be showing you guys a lot more of these maps, so stay tuned for that. But for now, those maps tend to be the favorites among the Fortnite community. For the second section of this video, what I want to talk to you guys about now is going to be fighting practice. Fighting practice is another crucial way to improve your mechanics. As you'd expect, drill practice is super helpful and it'll help you build those fundamentals up, but it's also really important that you can apply this stuff into actual fights, and that's where a lot of this fighting practice tends to come in. The way you'll want to approach fighting practice is obviously first going to involve playing regular games. You really can't get good at fighting unless you actually fight a lot in real games, so you'll want to grind out rank mode. That's typically going to take up the majority of this area of practice simply because it's the most realistic and most applicable way to practice fighting. Obviously my biggest tip for fighting practice used to be grinding arena, but now that we have ranked instead of arena, it's going to be ranked. Overall, you can't really go wrong with grinding out fights in real games. They have real players, the realistic weapons, the correct map, and all this stuff is basically dialed in. So it is fundamentally the most realistic way to practice. When it comes to creative practice though, because I know a lot of you guys focus on this, the best way to handle it is largely going to depend on your weaknesses in my opinion. So I'll briefly cover some of the most popular ways of doing this. The first major practice method I recommend is going to be box fights. If you struggle in close range, especially if you struggle with going for peaks or editing on people or anything like that, then box fights is definitely going to be your friend. Box fights typically just involve 2 people going up against one another in a close range environment, going for the best peaks, going for the best angles, trying to take walls, etc. And although our most popular maps historically have been stuff like the Click's box fight map and Benji's box fight map and all this stuff, which is in a super close proximity, one of my current favorite maps for this is actually going to be Raiders realistic box fights. If you've done a realistic 1v1 before, then you probably know what this is going to be like. It's basically a realistic 1v1 except you're stuck in a big box, which means fights usually end up in close range pretty fast. In realistic 1v1s, you can kind of end up with some distance, or you can end up building the height limit or something like that, but in this map that's not really possible. You're basically forced to fight in close range, and it helps you an absolute ton if you struggle with box fights. So with that said, I'll put the code up to this map on screen right now. Another very common practice method is just going to be your basic 1v1 build fights. If you find yourself struggling with building, retakes, holding height, or basically anything like that, then it's going to be super helpful. The one disadvantage of this map is that it does have infinite materials, so you can end up cranking up to height limit. But if you're trying to get better at building and retakes and all that stuff, then maybe building up to height limit in a fight is not that bad in terms of your practice. Just make sure that the stuff you do in build fights isn't necessarily the stuff you do in game. You're going to want to modify your strategy a bit to save materials and whatnot, but for the sake of improving your mechanics, this is definitely a super helpful one. So I'll go ahead and put up the code on screen to Raiders 1v1 build fight map. This is personally one of my favorites. Now getting into our next practice method, and I tend to find that a lot of people don't exactly have one weak point in their gameplay. Some of you guys are going to struggle with box fights in particular. Some of you guys are going to struggle with building in particular, but a lot of you just want to improve overall, which is where I'm going to recommend normal 1v1 realistics. These are basically just a simulated mid-game fight. These are going to be super helpful in basically every way relating to fighting, and they're going to improve all areas of your mechanics simultaneously. So if you don't have one exact area that you can think of and be like, yeah, that's where I struggle, then this is usually going to be the way you'll want to handle your 1v1s. Basically, the advantage that this has over regular games is that it's realistic fights, but it doesn't actually require you to queue up and go into a ranked game and loot up and all this stuff. It's basically just non-stop constant fighting, which is super helpful when it comes to improvement. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and put up the code to find this realistic 1v1 map. This is personally one of my favorites, and it's been one of the most popular ones historically. So those are going to be some of the best ways to improve various areas of your mechanics through fighting practice. Honestly, I'd argue that getting into a ton of fights is going to be the most important way to improve your mechanics, and if you do a good mix of drill maps and fighting practice, you're going to see some giant improvements in your mechanics, so definitely make sure to make use of both of those. But with that said, guys, getting into our next section, and one thing I don't think enough players do is learning mechanical tricks from pros. A huge part of your mechanics is going to come down to simply being aware of how to do things properly, knowing a good amount of techniques, and really just knowing how it's supposed to be done. I find that a lot of people really miss out on the fact that there are thousands of videos and streams out there from pro players which you can learn from and improve your mechanics as a result. I'm telling you guys, one of the best things that improved my mechanics in the past was to pull up a pro's stream or something like that, watch them fight, and basically think in my head, all right, they just did this technique, why did they do this? Or they just made this particular move in the fight, why did they do this? Obviously, since pros are going to have some of the most established and high quality gameplay that you can find, looking at their gameplay and kind of just learning and picking up what you can from it is going to be incredibly helpful when it comes to not only improving your game sense, but improving your actual mechanics. So whether it's a Twitch stream, a YouTube video, or something else, I would strongly recommend that you spend some time VOD reviewing a pro player, figure out what they do and why they do it, and figure out how you can actually apply it to your gameplay. Bonus points if you can find someone who's in a similar situation to you. For example, if you play PS4, then maybe find another PS4 player, or if you play maybe low sensitivity, then maybe try to find a low sensitivity pro to emulate. But really, guys, I'm telling you, if you can do this properly, you're going to find yourself improving so much simply based on what you've watched. And bonus points if you actually really focus on it, maybe take notes and just figure out exactly what they do. Although who you watch is going to depend on your preference, and preferably it's going to be someone in a situation close to yours, I will go ahead and give you guys a couple of examples. A couple of the pros I'd really recommend watching in terms of their mechanics are going to be Polarized, Reet, Clicks, Mr. Savage, and of course I'm sure there are plenty of others, but those should be some good ones to get you started. And overall, guys, if you watch some pro gameplay and you learn from it, I can guarantee you it's going to be a huge help for your mechanics. But with that said, getting into our last section for this video, and this one is going to be a tip that I find to be pretty overlooked in the Fortnite community, which is to consider your settings and keybinds. Especially because I'm posting this video very early into season 3, I definitely recommend you consider checking out your keybinds and sensitivity and whatnot, and make sure that that stuff's not holding you back. Now, of course, I've said this in the past and I'll say it now, you don't have to have the perfect optimal keybinds, sensitivity, and settings, but I do find that improving some areas of your settings can have a huge impact on your gameplay once you get used to the changes, and that's especially the case if you find yourself not being super comfortable with the settings you currently have. At the time I'm posting this video, it's very early in the season, which means it's a perfect opportunity to consider taking a look, and if you find anything that could use improvement, now is the perfect time to make those changes. That way you can actually get used to them and really get good with them before the season really kicks into full gear. Since this isn't a settings or keybinds video, I don't want to get too detailed with all that stuff, especially because there's like a million different problems you can have with your settings and sensitivity. But if you're concerned about a particular area of your settings, then I do have an absolute ton of videos about stuff like keybinds, sensitivity, FPS boosts, ping reductions, and so much more. So if you're considering changing any area of your settings, then chances are I have a video on it which can give you some really good info. You can see a couple of those thumbnails on screen right now. So if you find that you might be struggling with any of these areas, then definitely give those videos a shot and they should help you out. But with that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on the best ways to improve your mechanics in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3. Overall, I covered a good amount of stuff in this video, and hopefully by following all the tips in this video, you should find your mechanics improving dramatically. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it. And if you want to see more content just like this in the future, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. I post an absolute ton of tips and tricks content just like this, so make sure you don't miss out. And finally, guys, if you want to show some extra support, it's always appreciated if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It takes like 5 seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a massive thank you to everyone who uses it. Also, guys, if you have any video ideas, it's very early in the season, so I've got a ton of stuff I'm planning out, and if you have anything specific you want to see, then definitely let me know down in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'll read your comment and make it into a video. But with all that said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.